Welcome to the Massive Change Show. I'm Justin Foster.
And I'm Dr. Virginia Lacayo. In each episode, we have conversation with leaders who are getting in some good trouble by challenging paradigms and shaking the system.
And after each conversation, the episode shifts to the second show, where Virginia and I chat about what we learned from the guest.
If you know of any leaders who will make a great guest, please introduce us.
And of course, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, and leave a review.
Thanks for listening.
In this episode, we are joined by Sara Alvarado, a writer and speaker who works at the intersection of racial justice and real estate. Sara is also the author of Dreaming in Spanish, an unexpected love story in Puerto Vallarta. After our conversation with Sara, please tune in for the second show. And as always, please leave a like, comment, or share this episode. Well, hi, Sara. Welcome to a recorded conversation of the many conversations that we've had with you. So before we get started with our three edgy, pithy questions for you, share with the audience a little bit of how you got here, your journey to this point where you're doing this amazing work in the world.
Yeah, so my journey is to put it into the context of this conversation specifically. I grew up in a very white, middle-class, educated family in Midwest Madison, Wisconsin, and in the 80s. So raised colorblind and was encouraged to love anyone, no matter who they were and what their religion or color was. But really didn't understand much about my whiteness, didn't understand about my privileges. And then flash forward, began a career in real estate and really got into real estate, in residential real estate, opened a brokerage. I married a Mexican man raising biracial, bicultural children. And in about 2014, had some big awakenings, really unfortunately based on Trayvon Martin being murdered, Mike Brown, like people being murdered, and understanding, listening to conversations around how racism is absolutely 100% happening right now. It is not history. It is not in the past. And so bringing those to, I guess my work was my passion because it was how I was feeding my family. Not that I necessarily was in love with real estate, but it did really well for our family. And then loving people, no matter what color they are, and seeing the massive impact that people were facing, and even microaggressions daily. And so combining those and realizing that there's a lot that can be done to have more racial justice within the real estate world, that's kind of the way that intersected for me, short story. And so that's what I'm doing today in terms of really addressing and looking for ways to dismantle the racism within the real estate industry.
So just one follow-up question for that. How you see racism manifest, let's say, in the real estate field, how that works in a subtle ways? People will assume that, if you have the money to pay for the house, then it doesn't matter. But it does matter because there are differences, right?
Yeah.
So how would you see manifested?
So I'm going to dissect that into two ways. One is the wealth gap is, people talk about the wealth gap, and Black families have 10 times less the wealth that white families have. So just even understanding how up until 1968, people were explicitly denied based on race. And then as of the Fair Housing Act being passed in 1968, there have been no ways of actually explicitly funding people of color to be able to enter into what is an incredible wealth building tool, which is real estate and home ownership. So the amount of wealth that has been accumulated for so many hundreds of years, and then to understand why it keeps on actually increasing. Like the wealth cap is increasing, it's not decreasing. So it isn't just about changing one law, it's about the whole system of how wealth and how money works. And to understand that, and then to not be able to address it directly, people have this mindset of, oh, well, that was back then. Like you said, you can help anyone. It doesn't matter the race. And then the piece about that in terms of how we see it on a day-to-day basis is the way realtors are paid, the way mortgages are sold, and the commission based of how people earn money in real estate. It's based on commission. So it's, you sell $1 million house, your paycheck is very different than if you sell a $200,000 house. Mm-hmm. And so the people that are purchasing first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, a lot of that are like the lower priced properties. And if you're a very seasoned realtor or lender, the model is how can you work less and make more, which means you're consistently serving people in a higher price point at a higher level. And so you can start to see where if somebody gets a phone call, or let's say they have 2 emails that come in, and one is to look at a $200,000 property this afternoon, and another one is to look at $1 million property this afternoon. That realtor might not be addressing their direct biases, or, they might not be challenging themselves in terms of who's going to get prioritized. And it's hard to be in real estate and to make money. So sometimes it's literally like, I got to feed my family. And so this is where I'm going to, follow up a little bit more. And I hesitate when I say that because people will be like, that doesn't happen. There are so many studies that is happening. So we also have to acknowledge not to blame the individual people, but to address how the system is set up to make it be like that.
Well, that's a perfect place to lead us to the first hot question that we have. I mean, in every show, we're going to ask our guests 3 main questions. And the first one is, considering your journey and your vision and your mission, what is your big idea that will piss off most powerful people?
Yeah. So I do tend to piss people off sometimes when I start to get really heated when I talk about this, some of these issues. I guess it's redistribution of wealth and understanding where money is and how there's so much money here, and questioning what is enough and why can't we as an industry actually be addressing the issues that the government isn't addressing. There's so many people that want to just pass it off. And there are ways that we can do something and take action right now. And a lot of people don't want to, greed is very desirable in lots of people's worlds. So people don't want to talk about, people don't want to talk about money either a lot of times, and wealth. Like you don't hear people bragging about, yeah, my parents helped me get into my first home, or like those conversations aren't happening. But yet when you talk about down payment grants, and then it's like free money, and why should they get that and not me? And, if race doesn't matter. So all of that can piss people off. So I would say my short answer is focusing on redistribution of wealth, because there is enough. There is a lot. There's an abundance of money out there, and it can be moved around a little bit, and everyone will be fine. In fact, more than fine, to some extent.
Yeah, and this is my challenge, especially to CEOs that look a lot like me. What I call a SWAM, a straight white American male. And most people I know that are in that role are kind of, I would call them kind of moderately progressive, which is a nice way of saying they're waiting for the government to do something that they should be doing. And my challenge to them is, you claim to be against, say, socialism as an example, but you're waiting for the government to tax you more so that they can redistribute the wealth, because the income gap and the inequality, let alone the systemic racism within sectors like real estate, those are not going to go away without redistribution of wealth. It's just in their nature, just with the pure math of it. So it's a simple thing for me
to say to a CEO or somebody that's, in this case, like a home buyer, a white home buyer is, or a realtor is, do you want the government to do it or do you want to do it? Because if you do it, you get to do it your way and you get the brand equity of it, of doing the right thing. Look at what's happened with Patagonia. Look at what's happened with even now oil companies that are doing a lot more green stuff. Their brand is benefiting from doing the right thing. And I find it to be such it's what I call patronizingly progressive, which is, I feel bad for them. I'm not racist. I feel bad for them. I just wish somebody would do something.
Yes.
Well, damn, man, it's you that can do something.
Yeah. 100%. Yep.
Do you want to ask the second question?
Yeah, I just was given a pause to see if you had any extra commentary there, Virginia.
I do,
Or
but
Sarah.
it's related more to the third question, so I'm gonna go back.
Okay.
To work.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I love the clarity of your answer to that question. So when you want to do something massive, thus the name of our company, you're going to have challenges. And some of those challenges may be intrinsic, like your own world self-view, which is a lot of the work Virginia does when she's coaching system shakers, as their relationship with their own mind. And they're going to have challenges externally, and they're going to have systemic challenges and resource challenges. That's the broad scope. But for you, Sara Alvarado, doing the work you're called to do, what are your biggest challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about the buckets of where the challenges can come from. So I do believe that to do the external work, we need to do the internal work first and the interpersonal work. And it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like this constant circle, right? So I have followed Barbara J. Love's formula, I guess. I don't know exactly what she would call it, but awareness moves to analysis, moves to action, and then accountability. And knowing myself and my personality, I tend to go from awareness to action and I skip analysis. Whereas a lot of people will go from awareness to analysis and then get stuck in analysis and not move into action. So it's my own self-awareness and me being able to unpack and relearn how white supremacy culture is in me and lives in me, right? So like the value of efficiency over process, or, I can just do it better, so I'll do it. Like that independence that is uber, like gross. It gets to that level where it's like yucky. I would say those are my challenges. And then working with people who are willing to challenge me, and who will call me out. I think when you get to a certain level within, whether it's your field, there are times where maybe I come off as intimidating or I know a lot. And so people might not challenge me as much. And how else am I going to grow if I'm not being challenged? Right. And then obviously there's plenty of systems within the real estate industry that challenge us on a daily basis with this work. But I think it's important to focus for me on the internal stuff, what I can be working on, so that I'm being in integrity with the work that I want to be doing.
Very good. So when you just a follow-up question to that related to the biggest challenges, what are, because I think this is a question that other white people have that have had this kind of awakening to, and want to do something about it. It's very similar to like the freedom riders in the 1960s, that, the white people that went to the South to support the civil rights movement in the South. Is what are some of the current tools or resources that you use to work on yourself related to this? Do you have any insights for our listeners on a tool that's been especially helpful to you?
Okay, I think I heard the full question. So mostly it got cut off a little bit, but the tools that I use to work on my challenges?
Yes, internal ones in particular.
I think reflecting and, well, mostly the tool is self-love, because if I can love myself and know that I am a good person and I'm doing the best I can, that helps me not move into defensiveness or trying to excuse. It helps me go directly into the place of, okay, let's do this work, not because you are a bad person, Sarah, but because you make mistakes, and how would you know this? It's understanding that, like, I have been fed white supremacy culture through so many different ways, not just within generation and family systems, but media, all of the things, education. And so, of course, it's that, it's knowing that I am a lovable human being, even though I might make mistakes. I think that's the best tool, which I got from my mom. 100% shout out to my mom for really being able to show me the difference between, you did something bad and you are bad. Yeah, so I don't know. I just came up with that, but my tool is self-love. How's that?
That's awesome. That's why I'm smiling. It's like that's the beginning of everything. That's unconditional self-love, and that's where you get into. Yeah, that is the beginning. So I love that. That's such a profound piece of self-awareness on your part.
Yeah. Or self-trust too. Just trusting that I can do hard things and that I can grow, and that yeah. So I would say self-trust and self-love. Yeah. Fun question.
I think I will add, if you don't mind, I will add an extra challenge, or another level of the challenge that you're taking on you is, I have something that when I work with my clients, I work on something that is called decolonizing your mind. And decolonizing your mind is really understanding how we have been socialized and colonized, and how a mind that is not challenged, that is not being challenged, is a mind easy to colonize. And it's not just by white supremacy. And I think that this is a good opportunity to address the intersectionality of oppressions. That is not white supremacy only. It's also patriarchy. It's also fundamentalist religion. It's also greedy capitalism, and how all that is combined in the phenomena that you're perceiving and you're trying to challenge in the world and in the real estate industry. That is not just for, in the case that you're talking, is not just the disadvantage of Black families, but within that community, there are people that are more in disadvantage. For instance, a Black single mom is different, or a young single boy, for instance. I mean, because of the other factors, women are more in disadvantage than men, even within certain ethnical group, for instance, or people with disabilities that also are Black and also are women. I mean, or that are part of the queer community. You keep adding layers of identities that have been historically marginalized and oppressed, and then the problem gets bigger and bigger. So the challenge is not just how we redistribute wealth in a more equitable way for different, ethnical groups, but also within those groups, how we make it more accessible for the people that are more at this disadvantage. So I think that a challenge for you is, yes, challenge your inner white supremacy, but also start seeing how that the core belief, or the belief system that white supremacy installed on you when you were raising up and growing up and being socialized, how that is influenced and affected by other prejudice that you might have about being a woman, and how women manage money, for instance, or wealth, and how the capacity to pay, or being a young person, or being a person with disabilities and their capacity to pay for a mortgage, for instance. I mean, there are other layers of discrimination that we need to address if we really want to to tackle discrimination in the home ownership field.
Yeah, 100%. Totally.
Extra talent for you.
Yeah, no, intersectionality is an important place to be focused on, and even just extroverts versus introverts and how well they are treated and not treated. I mean, there are so many layers of how we're socialized. So yes, I do lump it under one white supremacy culture, which depends on how you define it. But thank you for reminding me to really get clear about all of the ways that systems of oppression are impacting us internally and externally.
Yeah. And externally, exactly. I mean, who get access to loans, for instance, and
right.
To the bank, and how you negotiate with a bank for a loan when you're a Black person, but also a woman, and maybe a single mom, and maybe someone with disabilities, and maybe someone with, that doesn't have like a Ivy education or anything like that, is adapt.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third question that is a little related to this, and I will go back to what we were talking at the beginning, is what is the biggest, more audacious impact you want to make in this industry? And this is related to when I ask you what is the big idea that will piss off most powerful people, is what do you think is your role within that industry? What is something that you can do to address that big idea that you have?
So my role in it, I believe, is to be very loud and bold and courageous. So I do, one of the struggles I've had is understanding my power privilege as a business owner, and understanding that like not everybody can speak out to the same extent without potentially having some job insecurities, or, like how will that impact? And knowing that no one can fire me because I am my own boss, it's easier for me to say things that might potentially be a risk for other people to say. So I would say it's to really leverage the power that I have been given that's unearned, and also that I've created for myself, and be able to take those risks and trust, and really push the limit with those risks. I think, that's my answer, because I don't really know what my role is. I'm leaning into it, and I'm exploring it and experimenting with it. And also, as a white woman, I need to be incredibly conscientious of when I need to sit back and let others lead and speak up, and when it's my space to really take that risk and speak out too. And that's a dance. And I hear people say, oh, well, I'm supposed to speak up, but then I'm supposed to sit back and not talk. And it's that response of just tell me what to do so I can do it well, versus no one can tell us what to do. We have to be thinking and noticing and in discernment and piecing out the nuances on our own. There is no easy way out for this. And so I think that's what I would say my role is to continue that exploration of discernment and taking risks.
And do you have an idea of, let's say, an indicator that you're succeeding, let's say in 5 or 10 years? I don't know, because we're talking about systemic change. It's not just like having a few more Black families having access to a home ownership, but actually we're talking about systemic change. Do you have an indicator in mind that will say, okay, we're doing a good job because I can see this difference now, this change in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a national actual change. Like, how can we be systematically contributing to down payment funds, for example, or where can we see money move at a systematic level nationally? And for models to change, business models to change, how we teach real estate, how we operate within real estate, I believe that that's going to happen no matter what. Things are changing and things will continue to change, and more than just me are interested in pushing that. For me, what kind of relationships do I have with the teams that I'm working with? That for me is where I will also feel like there's success being made. How do we work in diverse teams or with groups of people that want change? Because I do believe we all need to work together for that. And that's been tricky. Multiracial, I mean, I'm in a multiracial marriage, but also with the people I work with. And that's a beautiful space to be in. Like that, the exploration of how we relate to self and others, that's what I'm interested in, because I think that's where you see movement shifts.
That's
Yeah,
right.
very good. Yeah, very good. So before we shift into the second part of our show, which is kind of analysis, I guess you could say. And so before we say goodbye to you, first of all, thank you for your time today and your courage to be a voice. And how can people support you? What is the best thing people can do if they're like, I love what she has to say and I want to help?
I would say sign up for my email blast, which actually I haven't sent one out in a couple of months, but to stay in touch. Obviously, if people are interested in the work we're doing with Own It, Building Black Wealth, check out the website, get in touch. My website is also saraalvarado.com, so I'm sure that will be in the show notes. For us to figure out a way to stay in touch, and if someone is interested in bringing Own It to their community, reach out. That's kind of where we're at with the work that we're doing. So it just depends on in which arena. There's lots of arenas that I'm playing in. So find
Very
me,
good.
connect, and that's how we can move forward.
Yeah. And we'll definitely put that in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara.
Yeah. Thank you
Sara.
both. Have fun.
It was very inspiring. Thank you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
So,
all right.
reaction. What are your thoughts about what she shared? And you go first.
She's into a very ambitious mission, but an absolutely necessary one. And I think that she's right about saying that some changes are already happening. I mean, just financial literature and literacy and education is being more accessible right now. I mean, you can find more things on the internet, things that, courses and educational material that are for free, so people can access to it. And obviously, it's still quite complicated. The financial system in this country and in the world actually is very complex. So it's not something that anyone can just easily grasp and understand and apply. But at least there's some resource available, and that's some change that we didn't see 10 years ago. I mean, that we're start seeing more because of social media and the internet and all the resources available now. So that's good. And I agree with her that this is not just about giving access to or making Black families a priority and say, okay, I'm gonna focus all my clientele on Black folks, but actually is more a systemic change. Is not enough that just Sara and her company and maybe a few allies focus on this. We need to think it at the systemic level, and that involves a lot of actors and a lot of factors and a lot of elements of the system that has to be challenged and changed and tweaked. I mean, that's at the legislation level and the financial institutions level and policies, and government has to be involved, not just the federal government, but local governments as well. And the constructors and the house developers and the real estate.
Right.
I mean, the real estate is just one actor of very
Right.
complex ecosystem that is the home ownership in this country. And even to challenge, maybe to open up the debate about the idea, and I'm being provocative here because I have some opinions, but the idea that you have this idea of the life path that we inherit from the industrial revolution, that you're born, you go to school, you get a job, that you start at the minimum level, you start saving, you buy, you get married, you have kids, you pay a house as
Hmm.
soon as possible, then you die in that house and you inherit the mortgage to your kids and your grandkids. That idea, and you live in the same place for the rest of your life because it's close to work, which is the factory. That doesn't work anymore. I mean, we're in a very globalized world, and now you don't live where your work is. You don't work where you live. You don't find a job
Hmm.
where, in your area. You go to wherever the job is and you move around, and houses have been seen now more as an investment and not only just as a place where you live. So there are many changes in the mentality of people, and especially younger generations that are more mobile now, related to home ownership, and we have to take that into account. But that
Right.
also means that how to give them access to the option and the opportunity if that's what they choose to do. So I think that
Yeah.
is a big challenge, and for someone that is a business owner to say, I'm gonna take on this and change the system of the real estate industry by making it more equitable for everybody, is something that she will hardly be able to do by herself. I mean, you really
Right.
need a whole movement, and you need it at a global level. But where she's saying that she's going to start, and that she wants to start, that is bringing the debate to the public agenda and being really loud about it
Yeah.
and challenge everybody. I mean, take every opportunity to bring that discussion to the public sphere, and challenge, and starting by challenging herself and the inner oppressions that we all have because of the way we've been socialized. And as I say, starting by
Hmm.
decolonizing her own mind and challenge other mindsets of the people that she worked with and that are part of the industry, is a good way to start. And also by building alliances within that industry and say, how can we make this better with the research and the conditions and the power that we have actually available right now. I think that's a good start. The way to change a system like that is either top down, like the government make a massive,
Hmm.
radical, systemic change, and that can happen. Not soon, I guess, but it could happen. Is an
Hmm.
option. Or the other way is to change a system. Any complex system is by changing the patterns of interactions of the elements. So that means changing the way the elements of the system. That means the real estate industry and the financial industry, the financial institutions and the homeowners and the people that wants to buy houses and communities, etc., start seeing this phenomena in a different way and acting in a different way based on their new perspective. So raising
Right.
awareness is the first step to challenge the current patterns of interactions that the elements of the system actually right now they are having.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting because, um, well, what struck me is, you and I are talking about now this idea of equity-based transformation, and there was a trend. There was kind of the transformation of like workers' safety and workers' rights was a trend for a while in business, and began in that in the early 1900s, and then there was the trend of um, the like I remember early, going back to my first jobs that weren't on the ranch, the idea of employee benefits were just for executives. eventually employee benefits and treating your people well beyond just workplace safety became a trend. And then, the digital transformation, which is one of the most significant transformations in the history of the world. But there's always, if it's evolution, there's always something next. And we believe that that next thing that's happening now, and Sarah's work is an example of this, is equity-based transformation, which is infusing not just diversity, inclusion, and equity into systems, but using the power of a brand or an organization to actually move the needle on systemic change. And as someone that would be, kind of I would say I'm sort of a moderate libertarian politically here, is waiting for the government to do the right thing, you're going to wait a long damn time. And so that's why we talk about like social pressure that's happening. And to your point, without awareness, there's not social pressure. And so it's interesting, though, is that the awareness is not to bring awareness to the government. Like, this is happening, change it. It's bringing awareness to your own industry, which requires its own kind of courage. It's one thing to stand outside of a government office holding a sign. It's another thing to tell your peers that they are unconsciously racist in the way they're doing things. And I find that fascinating. And I think there are trends here too that, home ownership, as you said, especially in the U.S., is so ingrained into our culture. Well, similar to work ethic, that's so ingrained into our culture, and individualism, rugged individualism, so ingrained into our culture. Those are not bad things, but we have to realize, and I see this as a white man, you have to realize that those systems were set up to benefit us first. And I think that's where you see a lot of the anger that's out there, the white rage, as they call it, is that the system is changing to be more equitable and more fair, but it's not happening at your expense. So it's a weird reason to be angry. But I can just imagine, having worked having helped basically every aspect of the real estate industry with branding and understanding the people that are in those various roles, especially on the finance side and like the big real estate companies, that Sara is a heretic. But, note, if you want to be a system shaker, you're going to have to be a heretic. You're going to have to flip some tables, to use a Jesus reference.
And as you mentioned, and she mentioned too, as business owners, we have way more power than we think we have to make differences, to make big changes. You were saying it's true. Not only people having more access to resources and opportunities, and is not taking anything away from you, is not affecting you in any way, but actually is the opposite. It benefits you.
Right.
When everybody gets better, then everybody benefits. Everybody gets better. Business are better. There is more capacity to increase, buying. Is having more groups of the population that has been in disadvantage accessing to resource and capacity to buy things and to purchase and to exchange currency,
right,
in many ways will benefit your business as well. So you want people to be better off. No matter who,
right,
like everybody should be
right,
better off if you want to thrive as a business, no matter what kind of business you have. But also make me think of, there's some business that has been very strategic about home ownership, for instance, and other benefits. The business, the companies have the freedom to decide what benefits they're going to give to their employees. There is the legal benefits that they're required to do, but then after that, the sky is the limit. It's really up to you. And there are some companies that on purpose, they have created some housing systems or conditions for their employees, certain employees, people that, companies that work in remote areas or that are less attractive areas for migration, for inner migration. They have house developments, like housing developments that attract good high level of employees. So it's a way of thinking is how actually providing access to my employees to either internal loans. I know many companies and nonprofit organizations also that knowing how financial institutions are really exploitative and very inaccessible to many people, they created their own kind of loan system.
Yeah, like
They
a credit union, internal credit union. Yeah.
yeah, some kind of internal credit union where they can loan money to their employees in a with the and the let's say the guarantees their own salaries, for instance, that the company has in the first place, so they can just pay themselves off first. Or there are many other ways in which you as a company can provide more access to resources and opportunities to your employees that are not in your detriment, but actually is going to benefit because it's going to create stability, it's going to create loyalty, it's going to guarantee that the better off of the people that you're working with, and is also being consequent, as I said, is being aligned with the values and the brand that you actually want to have and promote.
Right.
So there are many ways that business owners, without saying like, oh, the government has to do that, you can start doing some things. You have the resource and you have the freedom to actually make a lot of decisions and to create inner systems that will start challenging this kind of systemic difference and oppression, that it will eventually catch up by others. I mean, you will become a role model that others might follow.
Right.
So it's always in your benefit.
Right. Yeah, one company, well-run company, profitable company with, the guts to go out and do something different becomes often, I think, that pressure point that creates the, on the complex adaptive system to make that change. The final thought I have here too is, again, I because just of my own interest, I look at things through kind of a political, historical lens. And there's some mythology here debunking is income inequality is a fact. It's a real thing. Or income disparity, the differences in income. It's a real thing. It's not a political opinion. It's a data fact. You can look it up. And there's the reaction to that is often either consciously or subconsciously racist unto itself. I hear that a lot. But my point here to this idea is income inequality or income disparity is a drag on the economy. And so this idea that we need less regulation, that's generally true to some extent. I think, the freedom to innovate and all of that, and a fairly distributed tax system, things like that. Those are, I think, right. However, if you don't do the right thing, there's the market pressure now, mostly from millennials and Zoomers, that will lead to additional government regulation. It will lead to tax increases. And so it's, to me, just common sense to get out in front of that and start doing the right thing now. And then you're contributing to the change, and everyone benefits when you do that. But my main point here is to challenge that, income discrepancy or income gap, the income gap, it permeates so many different areas of society. From, you can tie it directly to domestic violence. You can tie it directly to drug addiction. You can tie it directly to low wages. The perpetuation of low wages because you get slotted as a low skill laborer. All of that is part of the change, which is why a thing a company could do, and this is not really related to what Sarah was saying directly, but by paying a really true fair wage to their employees and helping, as you said, doing things internally to help remove some of these obstacles, those are things that you can do right now. You don't have to wait to be told to do it. So my challenge to leaders, business leaders, especially white men, is why are you not doing it? That's an internal question you're going to have to ask yourself. Why are you not doing it? Any final thoughts before we hit pause?
Well, not really. I mean, I said so many things about this, and I think that we can. I love that Sara is saying like, okay, this is my final thought. I love that she is a real estate agent, and you will say, as a freelancer or a small business owner, there is nothing you can do about anything. It's like, and that's the mentality of many people. It's like, what can I do? I see so many problems in the world, but I'm just this. I'm just a small business owner, and I make my money on commissions. And so that idea that we're completely powerless, and a person like her is just, no, I'm aware of the differences, and I'm working in an industry that is reinforcing that kind of discrimination and oppression. And just because I'm part of the system, I'm also part of the problem. And if I'm part of the problem, I should and I am part of the solution as well. So there must be something I can do about it, and I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna do it. And she's doing it. And that is something that every single human being can think about and can reflect on, and saying like, if I'm part of this system, I'm part of the problem. And if I'm part of the problem, I'm also part of the solution. What is my 5% solution to the 5% contribution to the solution? And it only takes that 5% that you contribute to the solution instead of the problem, and we add more people contributing 5% to that, and we can solve a systemic problem altogether.
Right. Awesome. That was fun. Thank you for
That was really fun.
the vigorous conversation. And I can't wait for the next one.
Thank you.